All right. So I'm so excited because we got Kayla here and we met probably a year ago. Is that right? Is that correct?
I think so, roughly.
Okay.
Roughly-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, and we met through I was explaining this to my wife. So we met through Book Siphon,
Yeah.
right? So I think I saw a post from Book Siphon on Instagram and I'm like, "Oh, cool. What's this?" And so I also use Book Siphon to promote my book. And then all of a sudden I think I might have DM'd you, slipped into your DMs or sent you a message and then all of a sudden we started talking and then I was really intrigued with your book, so I bought your book, I read your book, love your book. So yeah, that's how we met, which is crazy. I think
Yeah.
I think something I love about you that I've learned about you, and you're really the definition of what makes this show special, is getting people on the show that are authentic, that are genuine. Super cliche and corny because I feel like I say it so much, but having a genuine conversation with someone who is their authentic self, and I think you are definitely that. So definitely welcome to the show. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And it's funny because even writing a book and like a lot of my
Yeah.
platform is really about being your authentic self. And it
Mm,
does seem cliche and corny, but a lot of
mm,
people don't do it. So,
mhm,
there's got to be
mhm.
voices out there and role models that really exemplify what that looks like and what
Yeah.
that really embodies to truly be authentic. Because surface level, you can say, oh, be authentic, but what does that
Mm,
even really mean? And I think each individual obviously means something different. So,
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
all
think
about
when
the
you
authenticity.
yeah, and when you tell people that, they kinda, like, laugh at you. They're like, "Authenticity? Like, what are you, like, extremely authentic?" And it's like, I think a part of the pr if people give me a chance to actually explain, authenticity is about discovering the authentic you, of course, who you are, who you were meant to be. And you can define that multiple ways. But once you find it, it's a never ending process. It's not like you found it, done, I'm there, like life is perfect. It's more like once you discovered it, there's going to be more layers that you have to peel back in the future. And it's just this never ending process of growing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and that's kind of like the distinction of when I say like even in my book, when I say you're kind of like checking this boxes of society and it's just a
Mm,
surface level and you're just kind of going through the motions until
mm,
you start really designing and creating and checking off your own, that's when you're like tapping into your authentic self. So you're just
mm,
getting to that surface of that. And gosh, even since I've written my book, I feel like I could write like 8 more books and, those layers I've peeled back of becoming my authentic
mm,
self. And it's such an interesting process. It's definitely growth and it definitely doesn't end.
mm,
So yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying there.
mm. So we could definitely get into your book eventually, but so where are you at now? What are you doing? What's life like for Kayla?
Ooh, life's busy. I'm in
Yeah.
Charlotte, North Carolina area. I live right
Okay.
outside of the city, about 20 minutes away near Lake Norman. And my partner and I, we are multi-unit franchise owners of Jet Set Pilates. So we are about to open our first location here in June.
Hey.
We're working on our second location. We have signed for a third location. So, building a Pilates empire here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And
I
then
love
I
it.
also have founded a nonprofit and it's called Move Into Words. And it's
Mm,
really all about cultivating a community for young professionals to thrive physically and mentally. So we host events and we're really working on expanding not only our mission, but, impact to different cities. So building two companies at the same
mm.
time,
Yeah.
also, doing some speaking engagements, continuing to promote the book. But, you know, it's cool because it's all in the health and wellness space. For years, I was
Mm,
really heavily only focused into real estate. And I'm still doing a lot of stuff in real estate too, but everything now is really,
mm,
moving towards that health and wellness and, kind of contribution space. And I love it.
mm,
A
mm.
lot going on, but every single day is a little bit different and,
Yeah.
new people and new engagements, which I absolutely thrive off of. So
Mm.
can't complain.
I love it. Tell me about the nonprofit. So you do events. What do the events look like?
Yeah, so we actually just had a big one. We kind of collaborated with Jet Set Pilates. It just made sense. So each
Yeah.
event's about 2 hours. And our target demographic is young professionals, but we have kind of a mix of people that show up and really get a great experience out of it. But it's really a workout for the body and a workshop for the mind. So we do some
Mm,
sort of physical activity. We just did Pilates, we've done yoga, we've done boxing, we've done kind of a hit style workout. We're figuring out our next event for the physical side of it, and then we do kind of a workshop at the end. So we bring either a
mm,
speaker or this time we did a podcast panel style, and we kind of cover, I wouldn't say like a mainstream topic of a mental health issue, but just a topic that, universally we can all struggle with it. So this past one we did
Yeah.
overcoming burnout and building resilience. We've done anxiety, confidence. So just something that's really kind of like a holistic approach. So you come, you get a good workout, you obviously have something to kind of take away. We give practical tools, and then we also provide journals for everyone that comes. It's a
Hmm.
huge tool that's been, you've read my book, it's been
Mm-hmm.
huge for me. And also my co-founder, we've had, life-changing experiences from such a simple practice. And we believe it's something that every single person should integrate in their lives. And yeah, so we
I
got a
love
lot
it.
going on there, but
So how
it's
often do
great.
you
It's
do
an
them?
awesome community.
Do you do them once a
Um,
month or once a quarter?
so last year we did once a quarter. This year we're focusing on bi-monthly, and
Mm.
we're
Okay.
hoping
Wow.
we're hoping to take it. You know, we're really expanding very fast in Charlotte, which is cool. We knew once we kind of started getting the momentum going that it would start to take off, and that we're kind of at that phase. So we're working on partnerships and more sponsorships to be able to kind of expand it outside of the Charlotte market as well. So
Amazing.
we're excited.
That's super cool. So do you bring in guest speakers? Do you speak? Does your co-founder speak? How does that work?
I've spoke at one. We do bring in guest speakers. We're working on kind of attracting even larger talent to bring, different audiences. Ultimately, come on, you want to come out to Charlotte? We'd love to
Hey,
have
yeah,
you.
let's go. I'm
Yeah, we'd
serious.
love to have you.
I
No,
would love it.
absolutely.
Yeah, keep me in mind.
Um,
I want to come out. I want to come out for sure.
for sure. I mean, and
Yeah.
ultimately, like I said, we're working to expand too. So,
Hmm.
we'd love to have you way before we expand all the way
Hmm.
out because you're in the West Coast, right?
Yeah, Orange County,
Yeah.
California. Yeah,
Yeah. So don't get me wrong, we're planning on getting there. But
let's
in the
go.
meantime, we would love to have you in Charlotte.
Okay, cool,
So
cool.
so yeah, I mean, and we're not limited, which is kind of cool. Obviously
Mm,
our demographic and kind of what we're trying to accomplish, it's really, creating the best leader. We believe in making you the best leader of your own life so you can show up and be a leader for others. And
mm,
that's what our entire mission really embodies. But it doesn't like put us in a pigeonhole of like, oh, we only do this or this. Like it really is a holistic approach. So we can really do so many different things with not only just events, but
yeah,
workshops, retreats, and, you know, little more personalized stuff. So yeah, I mean, but would love to have you.
yeah. I love how you're bringing in fitness and the, um, not the informational side, but the mental side. Just bringing those two elements together because it's so fundamental. I was in the fitness space for 17 years, owned three separate gyms. I think we talked about that. And with that, um, my approach to training people was, okay, you want a six pack, you want to get a flat tummy, but like why? Like why do you want that? And
Mm,
because blah 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 blah. And it typically I found that it was always surface level. Not in every case. Like me myself, like Jake Barrena, like I want a six pack the rest of my
mm,
life, but that's me. That's what
mm,
I want. So I never push that on people. It's okay. So what do you want? Okay, let's find out what you really want, and then once you find that out, um, it's going to take a lot more than you think. And it's not just working out. It's not just diet. Like you have to work on this. You got to work on your spirit. And once people do that, boom, they transform. So it's really cool what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be, I've talked about this, but I was an athlete my whole life. So
Mm,
I would have kind of like what I call the athlete mentality. When I
mm,
would have any sort of personal problems, it would be, rub some dirt on it, suck it up, push it aside, deal with it
yeah.
later, rather than,
Mm,
really addressing it and processing it and hitting it head on. And journaling was the first like real like practical tool that I was able to start really uncovering, things that I had pushed aside or, getting a lot more clarity and get way more deep with myself. And,
mm,
for me, I'm like an all in, all out type of person. So when I
mm.
commit to doing something, I'm like, okay, let's do it. So
Let's
with
go.
journaling, I did it with full intention. And I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing with journaling is people just write stuff down and expect to get something out of it. That's not how it works. But when you
No.
do go with it with pure intention and, consistency and really being honest and vulnerable with yourself, a
Mhm.
lot comes from journaling. And so that was the first like real part where I'm like, wow, okay, to me, I do believe physical exercise is, helps you with your mental health. Absolutely.
Mm,
Like, I mean,
mhm,
I will say that till I die. But at the same
mm,
time, there's still things that you can't actually process unless you're willing to talk about it. And you don't have to talk
mm,
about it to other people if you don't want to. But writing it down really helps. And I think that's the first step to it, at least for me. I've realized that. And the more honest I've become with myself, the easier it's become for me to start talking about things that bother me, publicly, but also even personally and in a private level.
mm,
So I think it's just, it takes that first step. And for me, writing it down has been, I mean, huge. So
mm. And how did you stumble upon journaling? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so I mean, I write about this too. I thought it was the stupidest idea at first. I was like, there's no way, a 25-year-old with a long overdue diary is going to be beneficial. But my sister, she journaled for a long time.
Mm,
And when I was going through my divorce and trying to figure out my
mm,
whole life and I didn't know what I was doing and needed some clarity, I started journaling. And she was the one that was like, just give it a try.
mm,
And I was like, I have nothing to lose, I guess whatever. Like, I don't think this is going to do anything for me. And I was very wrong. And it started to become, where I was really able to kind of get some roots and like figure out like what do I want? Why do I want
yeah.
this thing? How have I gotten to this point and why have I gotten to this point? And it really was kind of that first thing that really allowed me to start to uncover some of that. Of course, work through a lot of other stuff as well, but just I really do believe, 5 minutes a day, just giving yourself that time, that personal time is huge. And that's where it
Mm.
first started for me was in 2020.
So how did it technically look? Because you open up, I'm a journaler too. I've been doing it for a
Mhm.
long time as well. So you open up a journal. What do you do?
Well, the first time I just word vomited everything. It
Mm,
was
okay.
like everything. And I kind of clearly paint the picture of I was running a lot during this time. The
Mm,
physical
okay.
aspect was on point. I was just, but I'm not a runner. I played softball. We'd sprint to first base. I wasn't like a long distance runner, but I was running miles a day. And I
Okay.
realized I was just constantly thinking, and the same thoughts were running and racing through my mind, but they weren't ever really being processed. They were just being thought out. And so I remember one night I finally just was like, okay, I'm just going to write everything down. And clarity actually came from those thoughts, rather than just thinking about them, constantly running through my mind each day. As I started writing it down, I was like, whoa, okay, this is why I'm feeling this way. Or, oh, this was a trigger for this. Or, this is what I need to do because of this. Whereas none of that clarity came from just me thinking about it in my mind. It was me writing it down, fully putting on paper. So that's how I first started. I was just like, word vomit. And I started to get a little bit more, I guess, detailed with it. I'd find prompts kind of triggered based off of where I was, if I was feeling fearful about this, or if I was feeling hesitant about this. I started kind of just doing some Google research on different prompts.
Hmm.
That definitely helped me to start kind of like prompting to pull some different stuff out. But ultimately, for me, I find that I just like free flowing it, and I say be vulnerable with the pages. A lot of people do kind of need some structure, so each person's a little bit different. But I personally like just paper, pen, what the heck comes to my mind, and write it down.
Mm, I love that. We had someone on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he said that when he journals, he does 5 whys deep, and I love that. So he'll just ask a question and then go why, and then he'll answer that and go why, and then
Love that.
why, and so it was so practical because I'm a why kind of guy, and I think you're a why kind of girl.
Yeah,
But 5 whys deep. I mean, that's hard. At some point, you're
that's
like,
deep.
where am I going?
Yeah, where's
Why?
the next why? Why?
Yeah, like you think you reach a certain conclusion. It's like, but why? And you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, that's real deep. I like that though.
that's
I've
why
actually never heard that, which is really cool.
I never heard that either. It was like a mic drop. I was like, okay, because I typically at the end I'm like, so leave us with some wisdom, and he said 5 whys deep, and I'm like, what?
Okay.
Okay, that's
Start
definitely
writing
deep.
why, guys.
Yeah.
I
So
like it.
so you're divorced. So
Mhm.
explain that. What was that journey like? And so I think that's where the book cultivated, and that's where it all started, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like the preface of it. My book's not about
Mm,
my divorce and,
no.
I mean, but it talks about the hardships of kind of
Mm,
overcoming and, really completely starting over. And
mm,
I think that's it's a topic for anybody, whether you're going through a divorce or anything like that. We all, I
mm,
think, have not like a midlife crisis, but some sort of
yeah.
epiphany in our life where we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And for me, that's what ended up happening. I was with a guy through college and, we got married and we're doing all the things that looked perfect on the outside. I call it like the
Yeah.
picture perfect looking life. And it wasn't at all. And I realized, I was just going through the motions, checking off the next best thing, trying to achieve this. And I was like, but why? And
Mm,
like, what did that really mean to me? And ultimately, I
mm,
realized it was I feel like I felt this pressure and it's not that like anybody was like, oh, you have to get married. Oh, you have to do this thing. It's just what I
mm,
feel like I only knew. I only knew, my parents, they were high school or college sweethearts. They played
mm,
sports. They got married. They had my sister and I. We've always had a beautiful family dynamic. And I was just following kind of that same path. And by no means were my parents ever like, oh my gosh, you need to do the same thing. It's just, I think
mm,
that's, I was kind of like a rule follower growing up.
mm,
I,
mm.
and I just did what I was supposed to do. And
Mm,
then I guess all the rule following kind of came to a head, and I was like, no, no more. This is
mm,
actually, this is not what I want to do. This is not who I am. This is not who I should be with. And this is not what I
mm,
should be doing. And, and my book is, taking responsibility to define your own success. So I take full responsibility for making the wrong decisions. By no means am I the one being
mm,
like, oh, it was his fault and this and that. And by all means, there were things in the relationship that were not good. They were very toxic.
mm,
Definitely wouldn't have worked as life partners by any means at all. But I also take responsibility for not recognizing that earlier. So
mm,
there's never at one point where I'm like, oh my God, it wasn't great, but I'm not sitting in the corner playing the victim role either.
yeah.
And I think that's a really kind of important takeaway of that transition from starting over to figuring it out.
Mm,
And that's, it was a very tough time, but ultimately, if I look back, it was in 2020 and started over with $900. Like, he took everything, took the dog, took the houses.
oh man.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was midst of COVID. I didn't have a job. I had no idea where I was going. And I went home to my family, and again, super loving, supportive.
Mm,
And I was like, I want your love and support, but I don't want your help. I need to figure this out myself. And again,
mm.
had no idea what that looked like. Lived kind of like a modern day gypsy for about a year, and then landed in Charlotte, and then have built what I have so far.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, it's crazy, but it's cool. And by no means is it like, oh, it's interesting.
Mm,
You reflect on that. I did the trend recently, like I was planning my social media for this upcoming month, and I met my younger self trend. And it definitely gave me the chills, because if I think back to, even in college, I was so set on doing broadcasting, and I was so set on doing this, and like what I thought my
mm.
life would look like is absolutely nothing what it looks like today.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I really appreciate the journey, though. And it's, to me, I'm just getting started.
Mm,
I've always had really big dreams. My parents have always really empowered me to dream big
mm.
and realize that, no matter what you want, you can achieve it. And there was never any
Love it.
sort of limiting beliefs on those ends. But I found myself obviously pigeonholing myself into a limiting belief until I, set myself free into that authentic version of myself. And now
Mm,
I feel like I'm just like really starting to make those big dreams come true. So it's cool.
I love it. So this is a really difficult question.
Okay.
So you went through this transition and big transition 2020. You had said, I didn't know who I was. So who are you now? Who
Ooh,
are you?
you know, I don't know if that's ever something that you just like specifically define. I think it's
Mm,
something that continues to evolve and grow.
mm,
I mean, I know I'm somebody that leads with my values. I know I'm someone that does value my relationships. I
mm,
value my health. I value, creating opportunity for other people. Um, I would say what I've really come into is switching from more of the consumption mindset to more of the contribution mindset.
mm,
And in terms of what I know I can provide and help other people with, I can also receive not only a lot of gratification, but I can create great wealth for myself in just doing that. And
mm,
so the abundance mindset has definitely shifted.
mm,
And so I don't think there's like one like sentence to
mm,
summarize who I am. I'm a very
mhm.
complex human. I do a lot of things,
Yeah.
and I love that. But
Mm,
I do definitely like, if I find myself kind of like confused, or I don't really find myself confused anymore. I find myself kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Sometimes, for
mm,
sure. I'm like, half the time I
yeah.
don't know what necessarily I'm doing. I'm just like doing it and figuring out along the way. But I definitely realize, when something doesn't feel right, and I don't just go into it because I feel like I have to anymore. So yeah, I know that's
Okay.
like kind of like a broader answer, but I don't know. How would you answer it?
Well, let me ask you this first, and then
I'm
I'll.
not the host, but I want to know, your answer to that deep question, actually.
So let me get back to that. But I
Okay.
I, I I will say I had a thought, and I think this is really intriguing. So right now, if you were to picture the end of your life, whatever that is, so hopefully a long time from now, what would the ideal scenario look like? Like, where would you be having that you would hopefully had accomplished everything that you wanted? So I had this, I accomplished this. Is it people? Is it assets? Is it money? Is it books? Is it what is it?
I think
What
it's
does
like
the end of your life look like?
yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, ultimately, moving towards, I know has the potential for huge impact, and I feel like I would be really disappointed in myself if
Hmm,
we did not expand that the way that it should be expanded. And
Mm.
that goes kind of simultaneously with Jet Set. Pilates has been a life-changing workout for me. So growing those two, I mean, move into words, we want to go, nationally. My co-founders from Spain, ideally
Mm.
globally. So really, really expanding that mission and impact. I definitely want to write more books. I, want to travel, do more speaking engagements. And I know the more experience and the more people that I reach, I know that simultaneously kind of rolls in together. I definitely will be on a beach when I die, near salt air. There's
Love it.
like cremate me and throw me in the ocean. That's definitely, I see
Mm.
that. And then the family,
Mm.
I honestly, I get this question a lot. I'm with my partner now. We're definitely life partners. We've invested heavily into businesses and we think and we
That's cool.
value the same thing. And it's amazing what we're building and super excited for what we are doing. And we have the same plans. We don't really want kids.
Mm.
Not to say that wouldn't change when we're 40 and maybe adopt a
Yeah.
kid.
Are
But
you trying to say
currently,
40's old or what?
no, not at all. I'm just saying, I don't know if like I turned 40 and I'm like, I want a kid if I want to be
For sure. For
birthing the
sure. I was
child.
just
You know
playing
what
with
I
you.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know how much I care and love people.
Mm.
I know I don't have to have the kid to love the kid as my own.
Mm.
So yeah. I mean,
Mm.
I guess like a short summary. I mean,
No, I love it.
I do like the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goals, and then like seeing yourself 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So I've definitely envisioned that.
Mm.
I think it's really important if you're
Mm.
not doing that, if you don't see what the end result
Mm.
looks like and what do the exercise where you're at your funeral and like what people are saying about you. Like if you don't really think about that type of stuff, then
Mm.
like how are you really leading your life and like what type of impact are you really making, not for others, but for yourself?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess I asked the question because right now I'm through my third round of editing for my next book, and it's about building legacy. And one of the things that's authentic about me is I think about death nearly every day, and it's not a bad relationship; it's a good relationship. And to define and to give you the answer that you had for me, who am I? Who do I say that I am? I am now. And so what I would say is I am here right now, present in the moment with all of my faults, extremely broken. And so those two things go side by side, but also as perfect as I can be. As in, I really believe that we were created to be perfect. We were created perfectly, and it was intentional. But at the same time, through life, through experiences, through circumstances, it has slowly weighed us down. And a part of discovering the authentic you is in the moment. Once you discover that authentic you, is not holding on to that authentic you, because that version changes and it shifts. So I am now is basically just saying that I am present in the moment this very second, doing everything I can to be my best version. And it's not perfect, but I am here now doing what I can. And then going to the point of death day stuff. My death day, our death day is coming at some point, and it's unknown. Could be today, could be in 10 years, could be in 20 years, it could be in a long time, hopefully. But at the same time, if I'm maximizing my life right now and living in the now, then at that point, I know that I have the best chance of impacting people and the people around me. Because I think people are what make the world go round. So fundamentally, being able to see people impacted and changed and moved in a direction that is positive. My goal would just be to encourage people, to love people, to lift people up. And I know you're aligned with that. And it seems like most contributors or givers are that way. So I would say that's my answer as of now. I am
yeah,
now.
I
Yeah.
like that. I mean, that's an amazing
Yeah.
perspective. And even in my book, I write kind of about we all, it's actually the title of the chapter is we all have an expiration date. And
Mm,
that's something we all have in common. And
mm,
I was in a really bad car accident. Definitely. I literally drove my car off of a mountain a mile high
mm,
and it got lodged up on a rock.
Whoa.
And legitimately, if that rock wasn't there, I would have flipped all the way down and there's no way I would have survived it. And
Wow.
but I walked out without a scratch. But it just, it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, oh, when you're faced with light, when you're faced with death, it makes you think a lot more about life. And I kind of like elaborate more on that in that chapter. But it is so true. I think if you have a bad relationship with death, that's something you definitely should confront, because ultimately it's inevitable. Like, you can't stop it. And I do think it makes you show up more presently. I think it does force you to think about life in a whole different light, and like what you're actually doing and why, get to that why.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm so glad that you're here. I mean, to think that if you didn't make it after that car accident, like, you wouldn't be here right now.
No. And and it's interesting because there's been I believe we all have a big purpose here to fulfill. And
Mm.
I think all of us have different reasonings and whys and everything, truly. But I also think we do the universe a disservice if we don't fulfill that and we ignore it. And I've always felt like I've had a larger purpose to reach a lot of people, to be able to impact them on a positive way. But there's been, moments like that where I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be doing bigger things. And I think we all have the capability to do whatever we want, and some people don't want to help a ton of people. I would love to help every single person on this universe if I can.
Mm.
So it just, but yeah, I think, again, coming to face with death, and when you actually think about it, it definitely forces you to think about what you're doing in this life and to really
Yeah.
fulfill it. So it's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy because you are here because that rock saved your life, and so the fact that
I
you
love
have the very
rocks.
gift, yeah, seriously, I love those rocks. It's
It was
insane.
a massive boulder. Thank God.
Boulder.
It was crazy. It was like it
So it was a
was
mile-long cliff,
it was a no, it was a mile high. So
mile high.
I literally, it was at like 5,200 feet in elevation in the mountains, and
Wow.
the cliff was, I mean, a straight vertical down, and it was about 30 feet down where the rock caught the back end of the car, and then the tree shoved in the front end. It was
Wow.
wild. Like, it
And
truly
so
was
was it
wild.
just you in the car, or was someone else too?
It was just me. Yeah,
Wow.
it was really dark, really windy, foggy. Thought I saw a deer, immediately just like jerked to the right. And I mean, again, you mess up a little bit, you mess up a lot up on those roads, and
Oh yeah.
messed up a lot. So it was crazy. It truly was crazy. I mean, literally, my dad was shook up. I've only seen him cry like twice in his life. That was one of them. And
Wow.
then the people that came and wedged it off of the side of the mountain, the I don't know, the
Rescue?
yeah, let's call him that.
Yeah.
I rode up with him to show him where the car was, and he's like, "You drove that? Like, how are
Wow.
you here?" It was crazy, and
Mm.
it's kind of those things where you don't really, because I was fine. I walked the whole way down the mountain, which was 4 miles down the mountain. I was so shook up. I didn't want to call anybody. I was just so freaked out. I had just started a new job, and
Crazy.
it was crazy. And so it didn't really hit me until later, though, I will say. Like, it was kind of
Mm.
those things where you're just almost like your adrenaline's going and you're just don't really know what's
Shocked.
going on. Yeah, because my daddy even asked me, he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, my back hurts a little bit, but I'm all
Mm.
right." And he's like, "No, no, no. Like, are you okay? Like, you probably should have died, and you haven't freaked out at all. You're pretty normal." And I definitely, that's how I am though in crazy situations. I'm
Mm.
not somebody that goes into panic mode. I think I actually go into like
Mm.
full like survival mode,
Mm.
and so I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is my wife's biggest fear. Anytime we're going up the mountains and we're on a cliffside, even just me
Don't
looking
tell her
over.
my story then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, she's gonna listen to this and be like,
Yeah, yeah. She's like, I'm never going up a mountain ever again.
"Oh my goodness!" It's just the idea of like me saying like, "Hey, look over that cliff." She's like, "Don't do that."
No.
She has dreams about apparently flying off cliffs, which is
Ooh,
crazy. I can't really sympathize, but I definitely. It's crazy. It's
that
crazy
is
that you made
crazy.
it.
Yeah, it is.
Wow, that's
So.
insane. So
Mhm.
to rewind a little bit, so tell us about your book. I loved your book, so tell us about your book.
Yeah, so it's called Always Squeezing Lemons, and I'm a huge fan of metaphors. I really do think it's
Mm,
an amazing way to take complex subjects and, break them down in a more easy and fun, digestible
yeah,
way.
I agree.
And so we've all heard, squeeze the lemons of life, and life gives you lemons, keep squeezing them. But the really important part of the title is the always, because life is always going to give you challenges. There's always going to be setbacks, but it's really up to us to turn those setbacks into comebacks. And, success is on the other side of failure.
Mm.
And, and growth is never ending. So it really is kind of that like key component of it. And through my book, I kind of describe like the lemonade making process from the very beginning. So it is a full growth journey, again, from the story of completely starting over, and then really taking responsibility to define what success looks like at the end. And so I do write very raw, very vulnerable stories and experiences of my own in a way that readers can take and apply to their own life, like almost feel like they're living in my shoes but in their own experiences. And at the end of each chapter, I have a lemon drop, which is like the key takeaway from each chapter. And it's kind of like
that.
if you were to read a meme, and get the chills, like, ooh, this makes so much sense. And then after that, there's a journal prompt. So there's 12 journal prompts. I always say, like, if you were to buy a book and just read those 12 pages, you'll take something away from it. But it's interactive. It's meant to be, easy to read, raw, relatable, and something to like really kind of kickstart, if you feel kind of like you're in a rut, or just want some extra motivation to take action on, living your best life. It's definitely something that I would be surprised if it doesn't give you that kind of extra kick.
Yeah, I know when we originally met and talked about our books and just how therapeutic it was to write a book, and this idea of really diving inside yourself to get that raw kind of authentic version on a sheet of paper. It's transformative for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
Huge.
didn't realize, everyone's like, oh, writing a book's been the hardest thing you ever do. I didn't realize that was actually true. I'm like pretty naive when I go into doing stuff.
You're like,
And
lies.
yeah, I'm like, whatever, I can do this. You're wrong. And it was crazy, honestly. But it was also like in a very accelerated growth journey at the same time. It was like almost like purging. And it was definitely, it's really cool because I didn't realize like how empowering my story could be for other people too. And even like I had somebody reach out, I'm mailing a book to Brazil because somebody wanted a customized signed copy from Brazil. So it's really cool to see the feedback. And
That's cool.
When you hear people reach out, like even somebody that actually my dad worked with overseas in Afghanistan reached out to him and said, I'm so glad that I met you, because otherwise I would have never read your daughter's book, and it really helped me change my life in terms of journaling. I'm starting my business. And it was crazy to hear those type of things, that it's like, okay, like I was meant to do that. So it's just, it's very empowering, but it's really cool to see how it helps other people. The whole journey, the entire like crazy process, the exhausting, the tears, the time and the effort, it was worth every single bit of it.
So start to finish, how long was it from the time that you said, I'm writing a book, to it's published?
Well, I definitely manifested writing a book, like with even the first few pages of my journal. I've always enjoyed writing. I was a journalism major. I didn't really know what the book would be about. Obviously, I was, I had no money. I was broke. I didn't know what I was doing in my life. But I wanted to write a book. And so I, started, I think the journaling started kind of ideas and started piecing together. And then as I just started living and going through it. But when I really committed to writing the book, when I was like, okay, I want to write a book, I have an idea and a kind of a basis for it, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to write a book. It was 1 year. So I went to a workshop out in Austin, Texas, and they were like, 1 year from now, you should be sending it to a publisher. And that's exactly what I did. So
Did
it
you
was
self-publish, or did you go to a publisher?
Yeah, so actually I originally started working with Scribe Media, and they were kind of like a hybrid publishing company at the time, but then that was the same year that they just completely went under. It was bizarre, whole different concept. But so after that experience, I had met a lot of people at that workshop, which was really cool. Like it was worth the money that I had paid that I didn't get back because of that, just to meet the people that I did. And that really helped me. I met my editor there. I met some other contacts there, and I explored all the options. I explored the self-publishing, I explored the hybrid publishing, and I explored doing like the actual like traditional publishing. For this book, I ultimately just immediately chose to dive right into the self-publishing route, because it was kind of one of those ones that were very personal, very raw. And I didn't want to have an entire concept changed if I were to go more the traditional side, or like even the
Yeah.
hybrid publishing side, I think was more like book promotion. Whereas if I did the self-publishing, I could start putting more of like my own like personal things out there that really resonated more with like the journey of the book, rather than just here's a book and here's this random girl that doesn't have, like who is she?
Mm,
And so
yeah.
that ultimately for this first one, I was like, I think self-publishing is going to make the most sense. And so really, after weighing all the options, I just dove right into the self-publishing side.
Yeah. Similar with me. I when I decided, okay, I'm gonna write a book, and then I got to the publishing spot where I had to decide, like, am I gonna self-publish or go with the publisher? I did the natural thing, which is reach out to the authors I knew and said, hey, what did you do?
Yeah.
And thankfully, I have, 5+ individuals that have written over a dozen books and been doing it more specifically for decades. And so they're like, hey, 10 years ago, it looked like this. But now everyone's doing this, which is self publishing.
Yeah.
Um, and pretty much all of them said the same thing, which is if you go with the publisher, they're going to expect you still to promote your book. Yeah, they'll give you some added insight and some flair, but it's not going to be probably what you think. And then the royalties on the book is close to nothing. And you're probably similar to me. I didn't really care for the royalties as much. It was more like, okay, I could use help on promoting though. Like I'm a
Mhm.
nobody in the
Right.
publishing world or in the
Yeah.
writing world, author world. So I decided to go self publishing too. And then this one, I kind of rethought things again, and I'm like, should I go publisher? Should I go self publishing again? I know how to self publish. I'm familiar with the process. So I did the same thing again. I reached out to actually one of the authors that I know. He's published quite a few books, and he has over 30 million copies sold. Like he's got some books published.
Yeah.
And he pretty much said the same thing. He's like, hey, if you go this route, they're not gonna they're not gonna promote your book. I mean, they really just want to see a social media following. They want to see that you have a podcast or that you have a big network, and they're gonna expect you to do that. So I'm still deciding whether I'm gonna self-publish or go with the publisher, but I have like an engagement letter all set up to where I can send out, and I'm dialed in. I just haven't decided exactly what I want to do, but I think I'll probably self-publish again, only because I'm familiar with it. And if I'm going to be doing the promotion anyways, shoot, might as well, you know?
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting thing, and
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things where I feel like I did a lot of things right, and I
Uh-huh.
also realized like I definitely spent money in places that I shouldn't have, or
Uh-huh.
definitely a learning experience. So, I mean, moving forward, writing the next book, like I have it to a T. I feel like, I mean, of course, same thing. You'll
Yeah.
always learn from each experience, but I was so green to it. I mean, ultimately, when I wrote a book, like it was when my first initial thought with writing the book, like it was not a hobby. I was just like, oh, I want to write a book because I have a story that needs to be out there. Like this is a
Uh-huh.
book that I needed like 4 years ago. Like I wish I had this book,
Uh-huh.
So that was my entire intention. So it kind of like I went through it backwards. When I first
Uh-huh.
started writing this book, like I wasn't I was working in real estate, and I was
Uh-huh.
doing great. I was able to self-fund all of it. So that's how it ended up coming to be. So I was like, I have this money that I would have, instead of going to buy a bunch of fancy shit, like I decided that I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book and help people.
Uh-huh.
But on the back end, that's when I had to start, building my own personal brand and like putting out the messaging and figuring out all that type of stuff. And, as as vulnerable and as honest and as much as I talk and put things out there, like I'm still like a very private person. I like to
Uh-huh.
keep, certain things like also very private. So it doesn't, maybe it doesn't look like that way on social media, but I still am also very private. I don't like to
Uh-huh.
discuss a lot of like personal things, with other people, especially that I don't know. So yeah, I was just kind of trying to find that right balance. And I feel like I definitely, now that I feel like I'm going in such the right direction with everything that I'm doing and investing my time and energy into. So everything that I'm putting out there on
Yeah.
social media just feels so like authentic and real
Yeah.
and flowing,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, it was crazy. The
Mm.
whole process is crazy, but I'm definitely
It
gonna do
really
another
is.
one. Just not quite yet.
Do you have an idea what that's going to be about?
I have a couple ideas. I
Mm.
don't, I haven't decided
Uh-huh.
exactly the direction yet.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I don't I've kind of talked about one idea. I don't know if I'm going to go that way, or yeah. So yes, I have some ideas, but I'm not sure.
That's exciting. That's really cool. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a question that you probably get asked a lot, because I know I've been asked
Yeah.
that question quite
Yeah,
a bit.
multiple times, which is cool. And it's like, it kind of changes here and there. And
Mm,
I don't know if you felt this way, but after I
mm,
wrote my first book, I needed a break from
mm,
writing. Like,
mm.
I didn't want to write anything. I avoided journaling. Like, I
Mm.
was just burnt out. I was like, I am tired. I have, I think my creativity is gone. Like, it's done forever.
uh,
Yeah, it was exhausting. I mean, again,
yeah.
great. It was just, you're putting so much time, energy, and effort
Mm,
into something that's such a buildup, and then it's out there, and
mm.
then you're like, and then
Yeah, it's a
I'll
lot.
never forget getting it in the mail, and it's, it's such an amazing and rewarding experience. But you're like,
Mm,
oh my god, now what?
yeah.
Like, it's just, it's such a weird, crazy, fun, amazing journey, though.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think for me it was draining to a certain extent. And then once I got to the end, I was like pumped, fired up, of course. And I it's a blessing and it's a curse, but I have this short-term memory where the next day I might wake up, I'm done, right? The book's published, the book's out there, people are buying the book, and that was a Saturday, and now it's Sunday. I'm tired that next day, and I'm like, okay, I'm tired. Like, what am I going to do at this point? Yeah, I should probably take a break and rest. And then all of a sudden comes Monday, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready for the next. And it's just it's kind of a curse because I feel like I go from one thing to the next, not like schizo, not like I'm all over the place,
Right.
but just to say that like I forget about whatever achievements I have very quickly, as in like,
Yeah.
and now I'm on to the next. So,
I don't think that's, I mean, I'm kind of the same way.
mm,
I think that's just kind of a trait of high performers. And
mm,
maybe I'm, overstepping by saying that, but
yeah,
I
no, no,
do,
no, you could say
you
that.
know,
Come
no,
on, no, I'm
I
just
mean, no, I mean, I
but
do
seriously.
think it is, and it's kind of one of those things where you have to, and it's even a constant reminder that I have to
Mm,
do is, and this is a practice that even I've actually learned from the gap and the gain. It's, writing down 3 wins from the day and then 3 wins for tomorrow. So it helps you give yourself credit daily, but then also helps you stay on track for like your main priorities for the next day. And anytime I do that and like stay in that structure, whew, I feel like way more better about my life because
mm,
not only am I, not just thinking about the big next thing that I'm doing, I'm thinking of the daily wins. I'm giving myself credit for the daily wins. And then I'm still keeping obviously the end goal in mind. And so
mm,
it's constantly kind of like that slow down, like enjoy the journey, not just like chase to the top of the mountain kind of mindset. Cause I found myself definitely getting caught in that race of just, okay, I got to get this next thing. Okay, now what's next? And that's
mm-hmm.
exhausting, And
Yeah.
then it's like, where do you really get to like feel and
Mm,
enjoy and
mm,
cherish that
yeah.
time and slow
Yeah.
down? And like I said, I do run that rat race. So it's like reminders that I have to constantly, because I mean, I'm not somebody that I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with just chilling here and doing that. No, like
Mm.
I'm a psycho. I'm like, all right, if we're doing this, we're like freaking, we are the best,
Let's
right?
go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely kind of that balance of finding that, keeping that high driven motivation and constantly keeping that end goal in mind, but also still like cherishing the journey and like giving myself a breather at the same time. So I get it. Totally get it.
Yeah. So what are some, just to change the tone a little bit, what are some current challenges that you might be going through and if any,
Mhm.
how are you breaking those walls down?
Well, right now, I mean, especially like investing into, two businesses, like a lot of
Mm.
time and energy and effort is going into like building these things.
Yeah.
So, coming from a real estate world where you're used to, selling the next thing and then the next transaction and you're, having just money come in, this is more of investing. It's more of long term rather than that short term gratification. And so I'm finding myself finding the patience,
Mm.
patience for, obviously construction and timelines and build outs and, getting everything in line takes a while. And so kind of that mindset shift of, you're not closing that next transaction, getting that next paycheck, you're building things. You're building an empire here.
Right.
And it's a different type of mindset, a different type of living as an entrepreneur, especially like
Mm.
the level that we're working to build these things out. For I mean, I find myself, I'm in a very fortunate situation that, I have a savings that I can live off of and be totally fine to be able to do these things. But at the same time, it's definitely a tough mindset shift. And I've found myself
Stressful.
constantly, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I also realize like there's not probably not many entrepreneurs that haven't done this,
Mm,
like so it is definitely that mindset shift. And we're doing other things to, make some side money, but it's just not what I'm used to. And so it's that shift of it's not that instant, reward, that instant gratification, but it'll
mm,
absolutely pay off. It's kind of that compounding interest right now is kind of that like new mindset that I'm kind of adopting. So I would say that's kind of the biggest struggle daily because I find myself like being like, okay, yes, we're good. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. So it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
every single day like keeping just staying focused and like being cool and realizing like you're good, you're safe, you're doing all the right things,
Mm.
and kind of finding the patience within that too.
So within that, where do you find your time being divided these days, from personal to business to everything that you're involved with?
Well, this is what I love about my days is
Yeah.
I'm working every single day, like constantly. There's always something going on between the nonprofit, between meetings, between jet set build out, between, new construction stuff. Like there's always something that's involved with moving to
Mm,
words and jet set
mm,
literally every single day.
mm,
But I don't feel like I'm working. So,
mm,
like I'm doing something constantly for work, but I don't feel like I'm working and I
mm.
love it. I absolutely love it. So, I think that's what's really beautiful about the whole thing. And, when they say, work, if you're doing what you love and you're doing what you're passionate about, like it shouldn't feel like work. It's so true.
Mm,
Because again, if you looked at my schedule, it's chaotic. It's a
mm,
lot. Like even I
mm.
was actually at a real estate meeting because we again we're still doing some stuff on the side. It's just
Yep.
not full force into real
Full
estate.
force. Yeah.
Somebody saw my calendar and they were like, oh my God, put that away. That looks so stressful. And I'm like, no, it's not that bad. But it's just it's color coded. It's very much so meeting back to back to back.
Mm.
So or gotta be here, gotta do this, and make sure this deadline's done. So it's great. But it's a lot. But like I said, I wake up and I'm like, dang, I'm excited that I get to do this stuff today, which is
Let's
cool.
go.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, that is. I've been in both places. I've been in a place where I'm very busy and did not like all of the things that I was doing, and it feels
Same.
draining and it feels
Yes.
tiring. But when
Hmm.
it's something that you're passionate about, it just feels natural, and it feels like, do I really get paid for this? Do I really get to do this as a job? It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, no,
So,
I actually wrote kind of there's a difference. I wrote about this in one of my newsletters. There's a difference in
hmm,
thriving and surviving in chaos. Cause I love being busy. I love doing things and not being busy to where I'm just like filling my time, but busy because, we're moving the needle, we're being productive. But when you're thriving in chaos, that's what that looks like. You're getting things done, you're pushing things forward, and you're doing it with a purpose and an end
yeah,
goal in mind that like you are passionate about and being very deliberate about. But when you're surviving in chaos, you're being busy in things that are just exhausting and draining you and taking away from what really actually fulfills and gives you life.
mm,
And so I think really defining that and what that looks like, because there's a ton of people that are super busy and they hate their lives, but there's a lot of people that are very busy and they're building amazing things because there is a lot of purpose and there is a lot of passion behind it. So really being able to identify those two things, I think is super, super important, especially in a
mm.
job or if you're, building anything. If you feel like you're just, surviving in chaos, it's not a great place to be. Figure out how to thrive in chaos, as I like to say.
No, absolutely. So, if you could tell the audience that are listening to this, that will listen to this, one thing to give them a practical tool to implement into their life to be successful, to live their best life, what would you tell them?
Oh, there's a lot of practical tools.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm all about the health. I would say, I mean, I'll say two things.
Okay.
Move your body daily.
Mm,
Move your body daily. And I think, I mean, ultimately, like if you're not physically healthy, you're not going to be mentally healthy. Like
mm,
it's just they don't go hand in hand. And then if you're not mentally healthy, where are you going to put your energy and effort and anything into anywhere? So I mean, super simple. Move your body. But again, journaling. Like I am a huge advocate of journaling. And I mean, literally, we started a fundraising initiative for Moving to Words called Operation 1 Million Journals. Like we
mm,
are so hot and heavy on the fact that we truly believe that if everyone journaled even just 5 minutes a day in this world,
mm,
we'd live in a better world. Like we would live in a better place in society. So start journaling. I mean, there's so many tools out there. There's so many journals out there. I've actually even had some people reach out to me about like kind of promoting their journals, and there's some really cool tools. Um, I mean, even moving to words, like we're working on like building out our own personal journal, like the ultimate journal, pulling from
Mm,
different places and combining.
love
So
it.
yeah, I am a huge advocate of journaling. I mean, I think everyone should write their own book. You don't need to publish it. You don't need to do all the crazy stuff that we've done. But I mean, gosh, writing is so therapeutic. And not on your phone, not on an
Mm,
app. Take pen to
mm,
paper, write it down,
yeah,
think
I
about it,
agree.
manifest it, like
Hmm.
put it on paper.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's something to say about, and that's really good, those two success tools. But I think there's something to say about not only using your hand to put those words on a piece of paper, but also eventually, once you could process it, speak it out. Obviously, think it and get it into your body, move in emotion. I think that actually just kind of hit me right there. I think that's beautiful that you can translate what's going on in your mind into the physical world on a sheet of paper and then put it into motion. So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. You're a superstar.
Thank
You
you
are
for having me.
absolutely. You're extremely authentic and you're genuine and you're kind and just overall a beautiful person. So thank you, Kayla. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.